My name is Claire. I thought my wedding would be the happiest day of my life until my own mother looked me in the eye and said, "We won't be coming," while my father muttered that weddings were a waste of money. I hadn't even set a date yet. That was the moment I realized I wasn't planning a wedding. I was stepping into a battle for my parents' approval, and I was dangerously outmatched. Where are you watching this video from? Let me know in the comments. I love hearing your stories. And if you've ever felt like the people you love the most were quietly rooting against you, hit that like button. Now, let me take you back to where this all began, in a restaurant in downtown Chicago. We were halfway through the grilled octopus when I finally said it. "I'm engaged," I blurted out, clutching the stem of my wine glass like it could hold me steady. The words dropped like a stone into the middle of our table at Novella, a sleek Italian spot with dim lights and glossy marble accents, the kind of place my parents usually liked. For a moment, no one spoke. My heart thudded beneath the silk of my blouse. Then my mother, Rosalind, casually brought her glass to her lips. "We won't be coming," she said, as though she were commenting on the appetizer. Silence. Even the waiter, who had just arrived to refill our water, paused mid-pour. My father didn't look up from his plate. "Weddings are a waste," he mumbled, slicing into his veal like I hadn't just dropped the biggest news of my life. I tried to laugh, hoping they were joking. But Rosalind only set down her glass with a soft clink, eyes trained on mine. Cold, clinical. "We're too old for all that nonsense. Besides the travel, the cost, it's not practical." Across the table, my younger brother Jake stared down at his ravioli like it might save him from having to speak. "Wow," I said finally, my voice thin. "That's okay, I just thought you'd want to be there." I could feel the heat building in my face. My fiancé, Marcus, hadn't come tonight. He said this should be a family moment. I'd agreed. Stupidly, naively. My parents had never loved Marcus. But I didn't expect this. "Claire," Rosalind said, folding her napkin like she was delivering a eulogy instead of rejecting her only daughter's wedding. "You always have these big ideas. Lavish parties, grand gestures. Why not something simple, just the two of you at City Hall?" Because I wanted my family there. Because I wanted my mother to help me pick out a dress, not tell me my dreams were indulgent. Because I'd spent my whole life trying to be the daughter they'd approve of, the one who followed the rules, got her degree, paid her bills, didn't ask for too much. And now, when I'd finally found someone who made me feel like enough, they couldn't even pretend to be happy. "Jake," I turned to him, desperate. "Do you have something to say?" He glanced up for half a second, cheeks flushed. "Congrats," he mumbled, then shoved a piece of bread into his mouth and looked away. The moment shriveled and died. I stared down at my own plate, untouched. I could feel the other tables around us, the soft hum of conversation, the clinking glasses, the gentle jazz from the ceiling speakers. The world kept turning like my parents hadn't just gutted me. I excused myself to the restroom and stared at myself in the mirror, wide eyes, trembling lips, shoulders pulled tight with tension. They weren't coming. They'd made up their minds. And I knew my parents well enough to know that no amount of pleading or explaining or waiting would change that. But something in me shifted that night. If I couldn't have their blessing, I would earn their respect. If I couldn't change their hearts, I would prove, somehow, that I was worth showing up for. By the time I returned to the table, I was already formulating a plan. "I understand," I said calmly, sliding back into my seat. "Really, I do." Rosalind looked relieved. My father gave a non-committal grunt. Jake looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. But I wasn't done. I smiled. I would make them love the wedding. I would melt their icy disapproval with warmth, generosity, and the perfect, impossible gesture. They wanted practical. I'd give them unforgettable. They wanted to believe I was fragile, oversensitive, naive. I'd show them a daughter who didn't need them, but who chose them anyway. Because sometimes, the best revenge is giving people the very love they tried to withhold from you, and making them question why they ever did. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight pouring into my apartment like the universe was mocking me for crying myself to sleep. I'd told Marcus everything the night before, how my parents shut me down like I'd asked them to help me move a couch, not marry the man I love. He held me, quietly, no pressure. just the kind of safety my parents had never quite known how to offer. "They'll come around," he'd whispered into my hair. But I didn't believe that. Not anymore. Still, I wasn't giving up. Not yet. That's how I ended up sitting cross-legged on my living room rug, surrounded by bridal magazines, Pinterest boards, and my battered green wedding planner binder from college. A relic of a younger version of me, the one who believed life would go perfectly if she just organized it enough. I flipped through tabs labeled venue, dress, flowers, then stopped at one that read family. I stared at it. My pen hovered over the page for several seconds before I scratched through it and wrote a single word in the margin: reset. Because this wasn't about just the wedding. This was about all the years I spent tiptoeing around their moods, asking for scraps of approval and calling it love. But what if I gave them something unforgettable? Not just a wedding, but an experience. A family trip that said, "You matter to me even when I don't matter to you." Maybe I could flip the script, force connection, forge new memories before they had the chance to say no again. My eyes landed on a photo of a beach in Florida, white sand, lush palms, sky like melted turquoise. Suddenly the idea took shape, a luxury family getaway, just us before the wedding frenzy really began. No pressure, no speeches, just warmth. Maybe if I reminded them of how good we could be together, maybe they'd thaw. I grabbed my laptop and started pricing everything. My heart pounded as I pulled up my bank account, savings I'd been tucking away for the dress, the flowers, the just in case. Instead, I opened a tab titled Flights to Florida. 5 tickets, round trip, then the hotel, something breathtaking. I landed on a beach resort in Naples. Every suite had a balcony, ocean view, private pool access. The kind of place my mother would mention for months afterward, casually, to her friends. They'd be able to brag. I'd be the one who gave them something to brag about. Next, the car. A sleek black SUV, roomy enough for my father's golf clubs and my mother's beach tote. I booked it all in one breathless hour: flights, hotel, rental, even spa credits. And when I hit confirm, I felt dizzy, free, terrified. Then I walked outside, took a long look at my car, the one I'd named Daisy, my faithful little hybrid, and posted it online. A week later, she was gone. A man named Carl from Evanston drove her away, and I stood in my driveway feeling like I'd just traded a piece of my independence for one last shot at belonging. I didn't tell Marcus about the car. Not yet. Instead, I texted a group message to my family. "Surprise, I've booked us a getaway, just us 5. Florida, beach, spa, no expectations. Just time together before things get crazy with the wedding. I want us to reconnect. It's my gift." My mother replied 2 hours later with a thumbs-up emoji. My father responded the next morning with "sounds nice." Jake just wrote, "Wait, for real? You're paying for this?" I smiled and replied, "Yes, all of it, just pack sunscreen." What I didn't say but thought as I stared at that thread was this: this is your chance. Don't waste it. Don't break me again. The second I stepped off the plane in Florida, I felt lighter. The air smelled like citrus and salt. My sandals sunk into warm pavement. My mother, Rosalind, adjusted her sun hat dramatically as we waited for the luggage, while my father made a surprisingly cheerful comment about the palm trees looking less fake than usual. Jake, pulling his carry-on behind him, whispered, "This feels like a trap." I laughed. Maybe because I needed to, or maybe because it did feel like a trap, but I was the one who said it. I had curated every detail of this trip, down to the fluffy monogrammed robes waiting in their suites. My hope was simple. If I gave them warmth, maybe they'd stop being cold. If I reminded them of joy, maybe they'd stop punishing me for choosing it. We checked into the resort, and for a moment, as the bellhop wheeled our bags across marbled floors toward the glass elevator, I let myself believe I'd done it. That night, we had dinner at a candle-lit restaurant tucked into the beachside cliffs. My father complimented the wine. My mother ordered lobster without commenting on the price. Jake made a joke about how he almost wore cargo shorts, and to my surprise, my mother laughed. Real laughter. "You remember that trip to Lake Geneva?" she asked, her eyes twinkling over her glass. "When Claire cried because her floaty drifted into the reeds?" I rolled my eyes, playing along. "I was 5, and there were bugs, so many bugs." We laughed, all of us, together. And for a moment, I forgot. I forgot the icy dinner in Chicago. I forgot the way Dee looked through me when I said I was engaged. I forgot the thumbs-up emoji that stood in for affection. Because for the first time in years, I felt like a daughter again. The next morning, I arranged brunch by the pool. Fresh fruit, pastries, coffee poured into delicate mugs. I caught my mother smiling as she scrolled through pictures on her phone. My father even took a dip in the ocean later, grumbling about the sand but grinning as Jake splashed him. By day 3, we'd fallen into a rhythm. Poolside mornings, lazy afternoons with room service and board games, dinners that stretched into sunset. I didn't mention the wedding again, not once. I just let them feel loved, because that's what I thought they needed. Not guilt, not pressure, just presence. On the 4th day, as we lounged beneath a cabana, my mother reached over and touched my arm. Her hand was warm and unfamiliar. "You really planned all this?" I nodded. She looked at me for a long time. "You're different lately." "I'm getting married," I said softly. She didn't respond, but she didn't pull her hand away either. Later that night, I found a note on my pillow in our shared suite, folded neatly with my name in my mother's handwriting. "Thank you, this is lovely, we're proud of you." My throat tightened. I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that small square of paper like it was fragile, like if I breathed too hard it would vanish. I wanted to believe it. I did believe it. Because when someone starves you of affection for long enough, the smallest crumb can feel like a feast. I went to bed smiling that night. I dreamed of walking down an aisle while both my parents stood waiting, smiling, clapping, proud. I didn't know that 2 nights later, behind my back, they'd be laughing for a very different reason. There's a moment, right before a betrayal fully lands, when your brain still tries to protect you. Maybe you didn't hear that right. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it's not what it sounds like. That was me, standing barefoot in a terracloth robe, frozen behind a fake ficus tree in a hallway outside the spa, heart thundering so hard I was afraid they'd hear it. I just finished a massage, my skin still dewy with coconut oil, when I turned the corner to head back to my suite and heard my parents laughing. I should have kept walking, but something in my mother's laugh, it wasn't her usual dismissive chuckle. It was full-bellied and cruel. The kind of laugh you let out when you're telling a secret you find hilarious. So I stopped, silently stepped back, and ducked behind the plant like some kind of cartoon villain. They were standing in the corridor, lit by a low chandelier. My mother was sipping from a wine tumbler she'd probably stolen from the pool bar. My father leaned against the wall, hands in his linen pockets. "I swear to God," she said between laughs, "she actually believes this is changing something." "Oh, let her," my father replied, grinning. "It's cute watching her think she's in control." My breath caught. "I mean," my mother continued, waving her hand toward the guest rooms, "she sold her car for this. Marcus doesn't even know." "I booked 2 deep tissue massages under her card this morning," my father added casually. "And golf for tomorrow, deluxe package. Don't forget the jewelry shop downstairs," she smirked. "That bracelet I liked, just charged it. Claire said it's all on me. So I'm taking her up on it." "Let her run herself dry," he said. "She'll come crawling when the wedding's off and she's maxed out." Then he chuckled, deep, satisfied. "Besides, she's not going through with it, not really." My knees buckled slightly. I gripped the edge of a fake leaf like it might keep me upright. "She'll either realize he's not good enough," my mother said, "or Marcus will wise up and run. One way or another, this wedding won't happen." I couldn't breathe. They weren't just tolerating me. They weren't warming up. They were using me, playing along so I'd foot the bill and fail spectacularly. And I had funded it. The golf, the spa, the wine, the entire beachfront fantasy, all of it. I had orchestrated my own humiliation with a smile. I didn't remember walking back to my suite. I didn't remember the elevator, or the key card, or the way my phone kept buzzing with some notification I couldn't focus on. I only remember the silence once I shut the door. I stood in front of the mirror, staring at my own reflection. The same girl who'd clung to that note from her mother, who thought brunch by the pool had meant something. "I'm done," I whispered, though there was no one to hear it but me, and I meant it. This wasn't disappointment. This was war, but not the kind with yelling or slamming doors. This was going to be the kind of war I'd win. Quiet, clean, strategic. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and canceled every pending charge linked to the hotel. The spa appointments, the dinner reservations, the room upgrades, every single unnecessary indulgence I'd booked in a desperate attempt to be seen. Gone. I pulled up their flight reservations next and moved them to tomorrow morning. Coach, they'd still get home, but not before learning I was done funding the fantasy. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was crying. Those tears had already come and gone in the silence of the marble bathroom where I sat on the floor, wrapped in a hotel towel, trying to keep my breathing quiet. No, I didn't sleep because my mind was awake in a way it hadn't been in years. Sharp, alert, done. By sunrise, I'd already been to the front desk and paid the remaining balance for my suite. Just mine. Everything else, charges tied to their rooms, spa extras, mini-bar binges, was being reversed or rerouted to a different card. "Is there a problem?" the manager had asked gently. "No," I replied, sliding my credit card back into my wallet. "Just changing the guest list." I walked through the hotel in my favorite linen dress, the one Marcus says makes me look like a woman in a French film. For the first time in days, I didn't feel desperate or hollow. I felt clean. Back in my suite, I packed quickly, deliberately. Not just my clothes, but the fantasy I'd built. The belief that if I tried hard enough, gave enough, they'd finally choose me. They hadn't, and I was finally done asking. I left one thing behind, a note folded neatly and placed on the counter in their suite. I didn't knock, didn't linger. The note read, "Your flight leaves tomorrow morning at 8:15. Transportation is arranged." I canceled the remaining reservations under my name. Enjoy the ocean. "I won't be joining you." No signature, no apology, no confrontation. Let them read between the lines the way I'd spent my whole life doing. By noon, I was at the airport. Alone. No first-class ticket, no valet pickup. Just me, a carry-on, and the ring Marcus gave me in that little park behind the art museum, where he'd knelt down on a day I thought couldn't get better. And somehow it did. The flight home was quiet. I sat by the window, forehead pressed to the cool plastic, watching clouds drift by like pages from a chapter I no longer wanted to reread. When I got back to Chicago, it was raining. Of course it was. Marcus was waiting at the curb, holding an umbrella in one hand and a bouquet of wildflowers in the other. I didn't even speak, just walked straight into his chest and stayed there. When we got home, I collapsed onto our bed and finally told him everything. The spa hallway, the laughter, the plans they made to drain me dry before the wedding even happened. "I'm sorry," I whispered through sobs. "I was so stupid." "No," he said firmly. "You were hopeful, there's a difference." Then he took my face in both hands and said the words I didn't know I needed. "We'll get married with or without them, and it will be beautiful because it's ours." That night, I deleted the wedding decorators' emails, canceled the venue upgrade I'd planned as a surprise, all the things I thought would impress them. And I didn't feel like I was losing something. I felt like I was finally choosing myself. We didn't pick a venue. We picked a garden. Marcus's parents offered their backyard in Milwaukee. It wasn't big, but it was bordered by lilacs, and the crabapple tree at the center bloomed just enough to feel like a centerpiece nature had planned herself. After everything, the idea of a ballroom made me nauseous. I didn't want white-gloved servers or monogrammed napkins. I didn't want to perform joy in front of people who would dissect it later. I wanted something real. So when Marcus's mom, Denise, gently asked, "Would you be okay having it here?" With a hand on my shoulder and tears already forming in her eyes, I said yes without hesitation. "Only if you let me help you decorate," she added, a little too quickly. "Only if you let me help you pick the playlist." His dad chimed in from across the kitchen, holding a ladle like a microphone. And just like that, we were planning a wedding. Not the one I'd imagined for years, but one I'd never realized I needed. The guest list was small, 32 people. Friends who'd walked with us through the fire, co-workers who knew our love story, a couple of Marcus's cousins who brought folding chairs and cooler bags. Jake didn't RSVP right away. My parents did RSVP at all. We filled the garden with thrifted lanterns and second-hand mason jars stuffed with wildflowers. Marcus's niece made the signs. I painted my own "Welcome to Our Beginning" board in big looping script that dripped a little because I didn't let it dry properly. Nothing matched, nothing sparkled, but it was perfect. Marcus and I wrote our vows the night before, cross-legged on the living room rug, surrounded by takeout containers and half-melted candle stubs. "I promise to never let you carry pain alone," he read to me, voice cracking. I couldn't even speak mine out loud. Just handed him the paper. He kissed my hand without saying a word. The morning of the ceremony, it rained. Of course it did. But then, just before guests began to arrive, the clouds parted like a curtain. Sunlight spilled across the grass like someone up there decided we'd been through enough. I got dressed in Denise's guest room. The mirror was old and slightly warped, but I looked at myself and saw not a bride who'd been rejected, but a woman who had survived. My dress wasn't designer. I found it on consignment. Ivory, soft, simple. No sequins, no corset. Just a wide neckline that made my collarbones look elegant and a satin ribbon around the waist that matched the flowers in my hair. When I stepped into the backyard, music playing softly through Bluetooth speakers, I saw Marcus standing under the crabapple tree, surrounded by everyone who had chosen us. That was the part that wrecked me. Not who wasn't there. Who was? Denise, holding back tears behind a bouquet of peonies she'd arranged herself. Marcus's dad, wiping his eyes with a napkin and pretending it was just allergy season. My best friend, Jules, sitting in the front row, mouthing the words "You're here, you're okay, you made it." And then Jake, standing quietly at the back, hands in his pockets, looking like he didn't know where he belonged. When we were pronounced husband and wife, when I kissed Marcus beneath that blooming tree and everyone clapped with the kind of joy that can't be faked, Jake was the only one not clapping. He was wiping his face. At the reception, if you can call lemonade in mason jars and a homemade playlist a reception, Jake approached me. "Can I talk to you?" he asked. We stepped to the side, next to a lilac bush that made the air thick and sweet. He didn't look at me right away, just picked at a loose thread on his shirt. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," he said finally. I said nothing, just waited. "I knew about what Mom and Dad were planning in Florida," he admitted. "Not everything, but enough. They joked about how much you were spending. I didn't think they were serious about trying to screw you over. I thought they were just being their usual messed up selves." He looked up then, eyes red-rimmed. "But then I saw what they did to you, and what you did anyway. And now this." He gestured toward the garden, the people dancing, the mismatched decorations and laughter. "This is real and they missed it." "They chose to," I said softly. He nodded. "Yeah, and I'm done choosing them when they don't choose us." Jake hugged me then, not the stiff, one-armed kind he used to give at Christmas. A real hug. The kind that says I see it now. I'm sorry I didn't before. When he pulled away, I touched his sleeve. "You showed up. That's more than they ever did." We didn't talk more after that. We didn't need to. The rest of the evening blurred into light and laughter. Marcus twirled me under the tree. Denise gave a toast that made me cry so hard I smudged my mascara down both cheeks. Someone's toddler fell asleep in a lawn chair. Marcus's dad played air guitar to Fleetwood Mac like it was a stadium concert. And I stood there in the center of this messy, beautiful miracle and realized I hadn't lost anything. I had gained everything. Not in the way I expected, not in the way I planned, but in the only way that mattered. 2 weeks. That's how long the peace lasted. 2 weeks of newlywed glow, soft mornings with coffee and Marcus's bare shoulder as my pillow, evenings spent giggling over failed attempts at writing joint thank you cards. 2 weeks of silence from my parents. I had started to believe, maybe, this was the beginning of something new, not just with Marcus, but with myself. A life where I no longer needed to beg for approval from people who only ever gave it in crumbs. And then the knock. It came on a rainy Sunday afternoon. I was baking banana bread. Marcus was watching some documentary about invasive plant species, and everything felt still. Until that knock shattered it. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and opened the door. My mother, my father, and Jake. Standing there on our porch, drenched from the drizzle, my mother's lips pursed, my father scowling behind her. And Jake, well, Jake just looked uncomfortable. "Claire," my mother began. Her tone wasn't warm, it was rehearsed. "We need to talk." Marcus appeared behind me, resting a hand on the small of my back. "Now's not a good time," I said simply. My mother blinked like I'd spoken in another language. "You excluded us from your wedding." My stomach turned. "You said you weren't coming," I said. You didn't give us the chance to reconsider, she snapped. And then we see these photos online, your wedding, our son standing there while we're humiliated. I didn't ask Jake to be there, I said, glancing at him. He showed up because he wanted to. You weaponized that photo album, my father growled, publicly thanking his family and not even mentioning us. My jaw tightened. I posted pictures from our wedding, I replied. I thanked the people who came. That's not a weapon, that's just honesty. My mother's eyes narrowed. You've always loved playing the victim, Claire. Ever since you were a child, it was always about how unloved you were, how misunderstood. And now you've turned the entire family against us. I didn't turn anyone, I said. I just stopped lying for your comfort. Jake cleared his throat, stepping forward. They're not listening, Claire. He looked tired, like someone who'd finally run out of excuses. You told them, I said quietly. He nodded. I told them what you overheard, what they said in Florida. You what? My father barked. Don't act shocked, Jake snapped. You weren't whispering, I heard it too, and you laughed while she paid for everything. My mother gasped. How dare you take her side? No, Jake said louder now. How dare you? She tried. She bent over backwards trying to bring you in, and you used her. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound was the soft patter of rain against the porch roof. Then Marcus stepped forward. You need to leave, he said calmly. This is our home now, and Claire has made it clear she's only welcoming in love, not manipulation. My mother scoffed. So now he speaks for you. No, I said, stepping beside him. He speaks with me, that's what partnership looks like. Behind us, the banana bread timer dinged softly. My mother's eyes scanned the inside of our house. Our framed wedding photos, the hand-me-down table we'd repainted together, the vase of wildflowers Marcus brought me last week. All things they weren't part of. This isn't over, she said finally. Actually, I replied, it is. Until you're ready to apologize not just for what you did, but for the years you've spent pretending you didn't, I don't want you here. My father's face flushed dark red. You ungrateful little, I closed the door before he finished. The sound of it clicking shut felt like punctuation at the end of a chapter. I leaned against it, breathing slowly, feeling Marcus's arms wrap around me. From the window, we watched them get back into their car. My mother's hands gesturing wildly, my father shaking his head. Jake didn't get in right away. He stood on the porch for a few seconds more. Then he looked at me through the glass and mouthed, thank you. 2 weeks later, an envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name on the front in perfect formal cursive, Rosalind's handwriting, as tight and stiff as her voice. I stood at the kitchen counter, holding it like it might explode. Marcus leaned in. Do you want me to open it? I shook my head. No, I want to see what apology looks like to them. He nodded, kissed my temple, and left me alone with it. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single page, centered, double-spaced, titled To Claire, Our Daughter. The first line set the tone. We understand that certain misunderstandings occurred leading up to your recent wedding event. Recent wedding event? I muttered under my breath. Not your wedding. Not the most important day of your life. Just an event. Like a company picnic they missed. It went on. We apologize for any feelings of hurt you may have experienced due to decisions made on both sides. While we acknowledge that words were spoken in frustration, they were never meant to cause harm. We hope you can eventually move past this with maturity and grace. Maturity and grace. I could feel my pulse rising. It wasn't an apology. It was a deflection. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry I had the nerve to call it what it was. The letter concluded, we wish you and Marcus the best in your future endeavors and remain open to repairing our relationship when emotions have cooled. Respectfully, Rosalind and Richard. Not Mom and Dad. Rosalind and Richard. Like business partners settling a mild dispute over an unpaid invoice. I read it twice. Then I pulled open the drawer and grabbed a red pen. The kind teachers use when they're done pretending the assignment was acceptable. I drew a thick line through certain misunderstandings. Wrote in the margin, intentional sabotage is not a misunderstanding. Under words spoken in frustration, I added, you laughed about ruining me financially. That wasn't frustration. That was cruelty. I circled move past this with maturity and grace. Wrote, translation, stay quiet so we don't have to feel guilty. At the bottom, beneath open to repairing when emotions have cooled, I added, apology not accepted. Truth has not been faced. Relationship remains closed. Then I folded it neatly, slipped it back into the envelope, and mailed it back. No note, no new letter of my own, just their words corrected. I wasn't asking for another version. I wasn't asking for anything. I just wanted them to sit with the reality they tried to rewrite. They never responded, but I know they received it. Because 2 days later, Marcus posted one of our wedding photos, me laughing, barefoot on the grass with Jake dancing terribly in the background. The caption read, "To the family that showed up, thank you for showing us what love really looks like." Within an hour, it was shared more than 100 times. By the next day, a friend from high school messaged me, "Is this about your parents? Because if it is, damn, good for you." People read between the lines, some asked questions, some already knew. My Aunt Lisa commented, "It's about time someone told the truth. Beautiful wedding, Claire. You deserved every moment." I didn't answer the messages. I didn't comment on the threads. I just watched quietly as the story changed. Not because I told everyone what happened, but because I stopped protecting the people who tried to destroy me and let their absence speak for itself. And somehow in the noise that followed, I found silence. The good kind. The kind that says, "You don't owe anyone anything, not even your pain." It came at 2:14 a.m. I wasn't awake when it arrived, thankfully. But when I opened my inbox the next morning, there it was. Subject, just me, Jake. For a second, my heart stuttered. Not because I was afraid, but because I knew deep down this was the one connection I wasn't ready to cut. I clicked it open. "Hey Claire, I know this is probably unexpected. I didn't want to send a text, it felt too casual. And calling, I didn't want to catch you off guard. So here I am writing something I probably should have said a long time ago. I moved out. 2 days ago. Packed up everything from Mom and Dad's house and left a note on the fridge that said I'd be staying with a friend until I figured things out. No big confrontation. No fight. I just couldn't breathe in that house anymore. I started therapy last week. I don't know who I'm going to be yet, but I know I don't want to keep becoming someone I hate just because it's what they taught us. I saw how you stood up for yourself, and I know that came at a cost. I also know I didn't protect you the way I should have, not when we were kids, not in Florida, not when it really counted. But I believe you, I believe in you. And if you'll have me, someday I'd like to be part of your life again. On your terms, no pressure, just hope. Love, Jake." I read it 3 times. Once as the sister who had always hoped she wasn't alone. Once as the woman still learning how to protect her own peace. And once as the girl who used to share a blanket fort with him during thunderstorms while our parents yelled behind closed doors. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. And in my world, trying means something. I stared at the screen for a while, then opened a blank reply. Typed, deleted, typed again. Finally, I wrote, "Hey Jake, thank you. Not just for the message, but for making a choice that wasn't easy. I know what it costs to walk away from comfort, even when that comfort is laced with poison. You don't have to be perfect to be part of my life. You just have to be honest, and you were. The door's open. But only if you want to walk through it for real, not because you're lonely, not because you're guilty. Because you're ready, I'm proud of you. That may feel strange to read, but I am. Let's start small. Come over for dinner next week. Marcus makes a mean chicken parm. Love, Claire." When I hit send, I didn't feel nervous. I felt rooted, like I wasn't reaching across a chasm anymore, but offering a steady place to land. That Friday, Jake came over. He brought wine he couldn't pronounce and flowers he clearly forgot to take the plastic off of. Marcus opened the door before I could and grinned. "You brought bribes, smart move." Jake gave a sheepish shrug. "Can I come in?" "Only if you take your shoes off," I said, smirking. Dinner was awkward at first. Not because of what we said, but because of what we didn't. The air buzzed with unsaid things. But halfway through the meal, Marcus made some joke about Jake's old hair choices in high school, and we all cracked up. And just like that, it felt a little easier. Over dessert, Jake looked up and said, "It's weird being somewhere quiet." I nodded. "I used to think quiet meant something was wrong. Now I think it just means we're finally safe." He didn't reply. But he reached for a second slice of cake, and that felt like enough. That night after he left, I stood by the sink, rinsing plates while Marcus dried them. "He's trying," I said. Marcus nodded. "He is, and you didn't shut the door, that's big." I thought for a moment, then said, maybe healing isn't about getting everyone to apologize. Maybe it's about deciding who still deserves access and who doesn't. Marcus smiled. You're rewriting the rules, Claire. And he was right. Because this time, I wasn't waiting for permission to feel whole. I was building a life where love had to show up honestly, or not at all. Exactly 1 year later, I stood in the front row of a small sunlit church, swaying gently as I held my daughter in my arms. Lily Ann Wallace, born just after midnight, 2 months ago on a stormy Thursday that lit up the Chicago sky like flashbulbs from another world. She was warm against my chest, tiny fists curled like she was ready to take on everything, even though all she'd done so far was steal my heart and several hundred hours of sleep. Marcus stood beside me, his arm lightly around my back, steadying me the way he always had. And on either side of us sat people who had shown up again and again, not out of obligation, but out of love. Denise was already crying. She'd barely made it through the second hymn before dabbing her eyes with a tissue she kept tucked in her sleeve like all the best mothers do. Her husband, Charles, reached over and rubbed her shoulder while pretending not to sniffle himself. Jake sat in the second pew, freshly shaven, wearing a navy button-down I hadn't seen before. His eyes never left Lily. He looked like someone who knew what it meant to lose a sister and get one back. And my parents weren't there. They weren't invited. Not out of spite. Not even anger, just clarity. Some people are storms. You spend your whole life hoping they'll turn into shelter. But they don't. So you build your own roof. The baptism ceremony was simple. The pastor read a passage about grace and new beginnings, about letting go of the past without forgetting what it taught you, about how choosing to love, even when it would have been easier not to, is the most sacred act of all. I kissed the top of Lily's head, breathing in that impossible newborn scent, milk warmth, something sweet and timeless. And I felt whole, not because everything had been fixed, but because I had stopped bleeding for people who never learned how to hold a bandage. After the service, we all gathered in the courtyard under a canopy of gold-leafed trees. Autumn had come early this year, leaves like confetti, crisp air filled with laughter. There was no fancy catering. Just homemade cookies, a table of sandwiches, and coffee in paper cups that kept steaming as people chatted and cooed over Lily. "Can I hold her?" Jake asked softly, holding out his arms. I hesitated for a heartbeat, then passed her over. And something about the way he cradled her so gently like she was made of spun sugar and second chances, it undid me. "She's got your eyes," he whispered. "Poor thing," I joked, wiping a tear from my cheek. He looked at me then. "Going to be the kind of mom we never had." I didn't respond. I just nodded, because anything more would have cracked something open I wanted to protect. Later that night, after everyone had left, after Lily was fed and asleep in her bassinet beside our bed, I sat with Marcus on the porch wrapped in a blanket, sipping cocoa and watching the stars peek through the clouds. "Do you regret not inviting them?" he asked. I didn't even have to think. "No," he nodded, tracing circles on my knee. "I think," I said slowly, "there was a time when I believed family was something you owed, that you had to keep showing up even if they never clapped when you succeeded or comforted you when you broke. But now I think family is something you build, brick by brick. Boundaries are the mortar, love is the frame, and forgiveness is the roof, but only if they've earned it." Marcus leaned over and kissed my temple. "I like our house," he said simply. "So do I, not because it's perfect, but because everything inside it was chosen, deliberately, with care, with intention, including me, especially me, because the real truth, the one no one tells you, is that healing isn't a destination. It's a decision you make every day, to stop bleeding for people who cut you, to raise your voice even when it shakes, to start again even when your hands are still trembling from the last goodbye." I watched Lily's chest rise and fall in the soft glow of the baby monitor. She would grow up knowing she was wanted, chosen, safe. She would never have to prove her worth at a dinner table, never have to buy her way into affection, never wonder if she was too much or not enough for the people who raised her, because the cycle ended with me, not with a scream, but with silence. The good kind. The kind that says, "We are home now." There's a letter I never sent. I wrote it one quiet afternoon while Lily was napping on my chest, and the house smelled like cinnamon and burp cloths and autumn dust. I don't even remember what prompted me. Maybe it was the voicemail I ignored from an unknown number. Maybe it was the dream I had the night before, my mother holding Lily, smiling, the kind of smile she rarely gave me. Whatever the reason, I found myself at the kitchen table, pen in hand, writing furiously like my fingers had been waiting to speak even when my mouth wouldn't. It wasn't a bitter letter. Not the kind that claws and accuses. Not the kind that slams the door with dramatic flair. It was tired, soft, honest. Here's what it said. Dear Rosalind and Richard, there's no point pretending this is a letter you'll receive, or read, or understand. I'm writing it because there are words inside me that no longer belong and they need somewhere to go. For a long time, I thought if I could just be the daughter you wanted, if I was obedient enough, successful enough, generous enough, you'd finally love me in a way I could feel. But now I see that the terms of your love were always conditional. Be useful. Be silent, be less. And if I dared to ask for more, I became a problem. I see that now. And I forgive myself for not seeing it sooner. I used to think forgiveness was something I had to give you. That letting go meant handing you back the power to hurt me again. But forgiveness, I've learned, is just making peace with the wound on your own. So here's my peace. Thank you for teaching me what love is. Thank you for showing me, so clearly, the shape of a door I would someday learn to walk through and never return. Because of you, I became the woman who knew how to protect her daughter. Because of you, I value presence over performance. And because of you, I understand that family is a verb. Something you do, not something you simply are. Lily will never wonder if she is too much, or not enough. She will grow up soft and safe, and when she cries, I will not call it dramatics. When she dreams, I will not warn her about how expensive dreams can be. And when she stands tall in who she is, I will never be the one trying to cut her down to size. You will not know her, not because I'm cruel, but because I am finally, fully free. Goodbye. Claire, I folded it neatly, tucked it in the back of an old recipe book I never use. I didn't mail it, never meant to. But sometimes I read it again, when Lily's sleeping in her crib and the house is too quiet, and the memory of my parents floats back like smoke through a cracked window. And each time, it stings a little less. Some goodbyes don't need postage. They just need to be written, so your heart can finally stop whispering what your mouth was too kind to say.